doesn't have any. But she's not a hip. I mean, I've met her like way before when she took The Rising Sun. About really 10 years ago. Before she was. I don't know where. Yeah, like maybe 7, 8 years ago. Before she was producing film.
Hi, everybody, and welcome to our panel. We have a really good team today. We have, I'll just go in the order. I'm not sure it's the exact order of the people that we have here. Jesse Siskold, who's Chief Operating Officer of Skydance Productions. Harrison Cordestani, President of Main Street Films. Daryl Miller, who's the Managing Partner of Fox Rothschild's Los Angeles office and Chair of the Entertainment Department. Adam Reed, Executive Vice President at Think Factory Media. I don't think Sandy's here. Harold Brook, founder of the Point Media Entertainment Law, and Stephen Hine, Vice President, Digital Studios at 20th Century Fox. So we know how to focus our panel for you. How many of you out there are on the business sides, agents, lawyers, and things of that nature? All right. Content creators? All right. Other? All right. If you would like to know more about our panel, their full bios are in the packet. So we'll start out, and we'll also have a 10-minute question and answer period at the end, if you can hold your questions until then. So in the digital platform world, has the deal-making process changed as the business has grown more lucrative, or is it still business as usual? Do you want to start?
Sure, I'll start. I think there's probably two extremes in my experience and everything in the middle. On one hand, there's still a lot of content in terms of digital that's defined as kind of low cost and short format. Sometimes there's no contracts and no legal around those things, and sometimes, and the best version of it's kind of kept minimal to kind of 1-page or 2-page agreements. And the other direction, and those are quick and easy. And the other direction, you have kind of very premium content. It's going to places like Netflix or Hulu, and the trick with those agreements is everybody gets excited by the numbers because the upfront fees are really high, but when doing contracts and licensing agreements for SVOD platforms, the reason the upfront numbers are so high is because the projected back end is so low. Because if you look at the windowing of kind of premium content for, when something's going through a windowing process, streaming and advertiser-supported digital platforms are at the end of that windowing process. And so, the reason that, a lot of those companies pay a very large license fee is because they have to cover all the cost of production as opposed to a television network or a broadcast network. They typically pay a licensing fee that's about half the cost of the show, and the studio has to pick up the other half of those costs against projections from home entertainment or foreign or whatever it is. And, when making premium content for digital, a lot of times you just don't have opportunity to make that downstream revenue. I hope that wasn't too wordy.
No, that opens it up.
Yeah.
By the way, our panelists say some of them have done this before, and they say they're going to go into just a conversation in a few moments. So, but I guess we can just continue down the line to start.
The deal-making process.
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Yes. I'll say the deal-making process in the digital world from our point of view. I'm a lawyer that negotiates primarily in traditional film and TV, but we have a heavy amount of digital business, and I have a head of digital and production, Jody Simon, who actually he and I spoke last year on MCNs. So we've been, if you remember us from last year, we've been heavily kind of focusing on that space. We have a couple of clients who are doing really original and innovative things in that space. And yes, I think the deal-making process continues to change. Last year, we talked a lot about the Disney deal and the awesomeness deals. There's still players out there looking for those kinds of deals, and you'll see a few more coming, I predict, this year. But the deal-making process changes, I think, as a function of leverage. As more and more potential players get under the radar are big companies or people with big resources that are looking to kind of aggregate or buy into audiences in the digital space. That's creating leverage for deal makers like myself to make those deals and to get lucrative front ends and sometimes get lucrative participation on those deals. But just to keep it short, since we have so many people, yes, the deal making process is changing, and it is as lucrative as ever if you have the right leverage.
Yeah, I would agree with that. We let me get my plug in early. So we have a Netflix show at Skydance. It's coming out May 8th. Watch it, Grace and Frankie. But we at Skydance, I think on the digital side, have focused more on the premium type deals, so the Netflix-like deals that Stephen referenced, which boiling it down really is more of a sort of bird in hand type deal where you know you're going to make serious profits right away, but you may have a lower ceiling in the long run is sort of how it boils down. For us, I think it's changed the process and it's changed our approach even from a development side. I mean, we come from the world of making very big budget feature films and have kind of approached television with that mindset of we're going for the Game of Thrones type, very high budget, high quality. And a lot of places in the typical network world can't afford to do that. So for us, knowing that there's other outlets that will match or go up has really helped as a potential seller in the market.
I also have to agree, obviously, with my fellow panelists. But as the question was asked, it seems like a lot of people here are content creators, and I guess that's really important to be speaking towards that. And I'm not necessarily assuming that content creation means smaller stuff. It could be, you could be heads of major companies and trying to really get a feel for what's happening in the digital space. But deal making certainly is really taking two shifts in my eyes. That much like Jesse, my company's sold films, feature films to Netflix on a regular basis and made TV shows with Amazon and other shows that are coming. And frankly, those deals keep on getting more and more and more sophisticated. So that's really telling of how that side is maturing because companies like Skydance and other companies are bringing in massively budgeted film TV shows and seasons, and obviously that has to get the prior legal attention. And then on the other side, I don't really know. It seems to me that it's kind of like a Wild West. I actually had some people approach me on a show that we're making on spec. And it's an idea that we tried to pitch to several of the digital like YouTube-ish type of people, like Full Screen and YouTube, and we didn't really get a bite. So our team just said, fuck them, pardon my French, let's just make it and let's show a proof of concept. And my partners and I decided to give them the chance. So we're actually letting them make 30 episodes on as a shoestring budget as they can to show the value of what we were actually pitching so we can go back and do that. So some friends saw that. They got really excited by one episode and they said, oh, okay, we'll give you, here's some, a non-exclusive place. We're going to be really big. We're going to go into all these cell phones and all the things that I know they showed me contracts and they've got deals with big carriers, and I won't spoil the fun. They're going to come out sometime this summer. And their contract was like half a page, and I just didn't get it. And I'm an attorney. So I know at some point I would be suing them, they'd be suing me. A lot of people would be suing each other. And I just said, let me look at this and now I'm not doing my own lawyering. I'm always dealing with in-house and outside legal. So my only point being that I think that side, once it becomes more mature, as the content gets away from, what did Seinfeld say last week? He just called YouTube the garbage can of the internet, and he said, leave the talent to the talented. And I don't necessarily agree with that totally, because really great gems show up. But as people's as the zeitgeist changes and as people really choose to watch a YouTube or full screen or shows, channels like that, to get really sophisticated and mature content, not mature in age, but matured as in competing with network and competing with the other streamers, then I think by then, whenever that is, whether it's 5 years or 10 years or whatever that timeline is, I bet you the contracts and the deal making will be just as complicated as like when you close a deal with Netflix. So.
My firm does a lot of work in the digital space in addition to mature media. A lot of our clients who are doing mature are also moving into these areas, sometimes with a mistaken the approach that, it might not make it on their network, but it should be able to make it on the next tier of these digital channels. And what the problem with that is now generally when you look at a Netflix, when you look at an Amazon, when you look at Hulu and Yahoo, who are all producing, in addition to their sort of lower budget stuff, they're all producing significantly expensive shows that not only rival the networks, the traditional networks, but sometimes are more than. They are willing to overspend on certain shows. The thing, like everything else, is it's a emerging field, so that everybody is kind of searching. I forgot who said the Wild West, but it is truly the Wild West. We used to say that, oh, you know what you have now, in 5 years, this business is going to be completely different. Well, the way it works now is in 5 minutes, in 5 days, in 5 weeks. I mean, it is a constantly changing process. And, the way to watch a lot of this, we're very lucky. We represent a lot of clients in that space. Plus, we've represented the Netflixes and the Yahoos, and not on the same deal, though. Because that's called a conflict, which, of course, none of us lawyers here know about.
Conflicts don't exist in
That's what I
entertainment.
said. We don't
You're not in
have-
entertainment
we don't
unless you have a
know-
conflict.
Exactly. The one thing that digital has done, and I think it's the next tier as much as anything, because you have to look at those as the big companies like Netflix and Amazon, and these almost as you're going back to how the networks work. I mean, those are the big boys. Those are the ones who are getting the agents are pitching to them the same way they're pitching to any other company. Sometimes they go there first. I can't remember who I was talking to about how some of these deals are insane. They will pay insane amounts of money to talent, it's crazy. But their deal structure, a lot of times they just think some of these companies think they're smarter than everybody else in the traditional media. And the reality is the basis of a lot of this is traditional media. You then kick it up into the platforming and all of these other areas. And again, a lot of times we haven't seen too many of these yet. I don't think we've ever seen any of shows coming off of Netflix. And we'll see how they do if they go beyond the Netflix world, if they're trying to sell international distribution or things like that fall outside. I think certainly my firm hasn't seen that. But it'll be interesting to see the kind of numbers they get, because traditionally there's always this argument that when you get product that hasn't been seen before, selling it into repeats, the new version of repeats, doesn't mean necessarily it's going to be a success. The one thing, I know I'm taking a lot of time here, but I figure this is the last I'll have to speak. If I do it this way, right, I don't have to talk about it, right? I cover everything and I'm one and out. Thank you. What I do
question was for you and you alone.
Oh, well, thank you. I thought that's the only one I read, so I thought I might as well. The one thing digital, though, definitely has done, it's opened up the floodgates. I think what it has happened is there was always a gatekeeper. Used to be just the networks. You couldn't just walk into a network with a good idea. Then it became, it moved over to the cable channels, basic cable channels, same thing. It's now, but what digital has done on a different level is allowed all of a sudden content providers an opportunity to not have to jump through the hoops that you would normally have to jump through, because it used to be in traditional television where a writer would start in the writer's room. You'd be a staff writer, move up to the next position, and that's how they learn their trade. And I think now You don't need that whole track. I think it's very hard to come in with nothing, but you don't necessarily need to go through the traditional path. And we're talking about leverage. I know we're going to come back to it, but my theory on leverage is who's ever willing to walk away from the table has the leverage. Anyone willing to say no, that's leverage. And I'm done. Can I leave? Throw down the mic and kind of walk out, and I'm sorry. Anyway, sorry for.
No. From a non-legal perspective, I'm a content creator, run a production company, and for me, you have to figure out what the definition of digital is. Digital is so broad. We're all here at the conference, and everyone thinks it means one thing, everyone thinks it means another. But you have to kind of separate it into two tiers. You have the Hulu's, Netflix, and Amazons of the world, which of course are the top tier, and it's where we're all in business at, and where everyone would like to be in business. But that is really the top tier, and those outlets are maturing. The deals are getting a little more clear. But I want to talk a little bit about the other side too, which is the true digital plays in a sense of taking them to traditional TV. So we just sold 2 shows, one to Sci-Fi and one to HLN on the unscripted side. I will tell you, these are 2 shows with some very big YouTube talent that have a huge following on YouTube. And these networks, as great as they are, they're not ready for this talent. They don't understand this medium yet. So it is, I agree with these guys, it is the wild, wild west on that side of things, because these networks aren't sure. Because traditionally, when I go out and sell a show, the network wants to own pretty much everything. And, sometimes we retain ownership, sometimes we don't. But the rules have changed now, because the people that are in control truly, and I think have the most leverage, are these content creators, are these talent that are building themselves on YouTube. And then as television producers, we're saying, okay, there's something here, more than just online on YouTube. Let's get them to TV. But when we're in the negotiations with these networks right now, they go, well, why can't I get a piece of that, back end of what they're getting off their MCNs? Why can't I own a piece of that YouTube channel? And I will tell you, again, from a leverage perspective, you have to be careful as a content creator. A lot of people, on one hand, what's good right now is that there are not a lot of gatekeepers, as you said. On the other hand, that makes the point of entry very, very low and easy, and everyone or anyone can get in. So I would tell you, strategically, if you want leverage, as much as you want to go out and be the guy or the girl that has the idea and the show and sell it, and I've got the leverage and I've got the talent, it's important that you find a partner, if you haven't done it enough before, that can help you with that leverage. We partner with people all the time who have talent that bring them in, and then we build shows out of them. But the only way I can say to any of these networks that I'm in deal with, no, we're not doing that deal, it's as these guys said, we're willing to walk away because we have the track record to do it. But my partner on it, who may be, a YouTube star or someone who brought the YouTube star in, doesn't have that ability to do it, whether they're big on YouTube or not. So my point in all that is to really, the leverage lies within the talent. In my perspective, align yourself with the talent. Of course, it's great to have great lawyers. In my estimation, no disrespect to any lawyers, because we have a lot of them, the lawyers oftentimes get in the way. And what I mean by that is there's so many deal points, and the deals take so long that sometimes the networks grow weary of it and move on. So what I would tell you is make sure that you have a good relationship with your lawyer, so that you could say, you know what, I know you're the lawyer and tell me to do this, but I feel like I have to do this, because at a certain point, as a production company, the deal may get too long in the teeth for me, and I'm going to walk away as well.
Yeah.
That creates a sort of an interesting segue into our next question, which was about the different types of packaging and funding that are coming together today with these types of deals. Isn't the YouTube star, when they're picked up by the network, being, packaged to become something else?
Yes and no. Here's what's fascinating. These kids on YouTube, and I say kids, but these kids on YouTube are making $500,000, $600,000, $700,000, $1 million, $2 million a year. They don't need the money from TV. But the smart ones, there are a lot of that I met with over the past year and a half, are like, I'm not sure if I want to get in TV. I'm making so much money here, which I get. But I'll tell you, the 2 shows that we just sold, those kids were very, very smart, and they see the opportunity that TV will bring to them. Really, all TV is for them is a marketing tool. So they're willing to, maybe massage the concept with the network. So it still highlights what they do as a piece of YouTube talent, but it allows them to really go much broader, so that TV is feeding digital and digital is feeding TV. And in an ideal world, that's what you want it to be. And you look at shows like Grace Helbig show, which is just now on E, and Jack Vale's doing well on HLN. These are a couple of the earliest YouTube shows that are actually gaining traction. And I will tell you, there's a lot more of it coming, but the networks don't really understand it yet.
Adam, are the networks actually making deals where if that YouTube star or social star can't actually translate and bring his or her followers to translate them into actual ratings, do they get paid less, or is that total risk going in for the network? How's that working?
Well, unfortunately, the amount they get paid is a crappy amount regardless, because it's cable unscripted television. But no, I haven't seen it in my deals yet where anyone's getting less if they can't translate the viewers. I think it is such the wild, wild west that if you look at basically all of cable unscripted right now, everything's dropping in ratings. So the networks are scrambling, going, well, wait, they've got 10 million subscribers on this and 6 million here and this, that. So they think it's going to translate. It hasn't always translated.
And the reverse of that, like, let's say, are they doing short-term deals so that if it just completely goes crazy and on the second season, then they go,
well, it's interesting you bring that up. It's kind of the blessing and the curse of selling these types of shows. So I won't tell you which network, but the initial offer of episodes is 4 episodes. So I think it cuts both ways, because they're kind of dipping their toe in the water to see if it translates. Of course, when they do the deal on the talent, they have the talent locked up for 4, 5, 6 options. So contractually, they'd have to stick by that. But we all know once something's a huge success, we go back to the table. So, the networks are tentative to dip their toe in the water. They're doing small numbers of episodes. The other network that we're in business with is doing a bigger order, because they truly believe in the series. But I think the first network, they're trying a scatter play of, hey, let's try a bunch of YouTube talent, see what hits, and then we may or may not in a season 2 order more than 4 episodes. And it's frustrating as a content provider and producer. Like, I don't know how to build an audience in 4 episodes, especially when they're half-hour shows and they're going to double stack them, so you have 2 weeks.
And how much advertisement do they give you? Does the network give you for like a month before 2? Like, you see
You're-
ads.
You're lucky if you get it a month out. You're very lucky if you get it a month out. Typically, I will tell you, most of these unscripted networks, it depends on how big the show is, of course. If it's a big show, they're going to put some marketing and promo behind it. But the fact of the matter is, a big reason the networks are doing the deal is because their marketing and ad dollars are so stretched right now that they feel that the YouTube audience will make up for that. So it's a Wild West. It's challenging, and I don't think anybody's really figured it out yet, which is what I love about it, because we're all, kind of trying to figure it out. But it's challenging because there's no guarantee with any of these networks.
Well, while we don't know what's going on, have any of you done, especially on the business side, done a funding or a certain type of packaging or funding deal that was interesting or different than what you've done with traditional media?
I'll tell you one that I can't really get too far into the deal we're doing now, but I'll tell you, historically, I thought that what Google did, Google came out and basically gave $100 million to a bunch of creators, as we know, 2 or 3 years ago. And the really interesting thing there is most of Hollywood says, we'll pay you $100 million, we own everything. Google basically said, we'll pay $100 million and you own everything. And they really weren't interested in the content. They were interested in the metrics behind the content. And that was interesting. Then it moved to a place where Google kind of learned from that. And then they went into a subscription model and said, we're not just going to give you $100 million for the right ones with the right audiences. We're going to create these subscription models with different tiers and kind of watch what those metrics do. And now we've actually moved to a new place where we're seeing deals funded now where Google, sort of like in the old days, Walmart, would just write a big check. And for something that's really unique. We have a client with a really unique asset, and they're just saying, we're at a super huge check because we want to see if we can take this super huge, unique content around the world and get 1 billion people to watch. And we're looking at where retail numbers may be, $20 comparatively. Google's going to sell it for like $3. And we're just, our head spinning, but it's a really interesting deal because the upfront money is wildly, successful for any artist, for any content owner. And Google's funding the whole thing. We're going to take the ride. So I can't get into the specifics, but they moved from just here's your money, here's the content to subscription to now they're doing really interesting large deals. And I did a similar one with Walmart as they were getting in when Walmart experimented with television and records. And they would write $50 million check to market something, and that's bigger than most television network budgets. So that's happening now. So if you're a content creator with something highly unique or an asset that's highly unique, I'm finding that the big players that have the resources are creating interesting partnerships, and we're able to leverage those partnerships into real dollars right now, and potentially significant dollars on the back end if big companies like Google in the digital space are correct.
Sort of related to that, are any of you finding that sponsorships that your shows have or product placements or things like that are that you've set up in the digital world get in trouble when you move to traditional media?
Let me just piggyback on something Daryl said really quickly, because we don't have very interesting financing, generally speaking. I mean, we have a pretty set up facility with solid investment behind us. But I think there's something probably we all agree to, which is the cable sort of ad revenue model is on very shaky ground and potentially broken. I don't know how many people watch live television right now and watch their way through the ads. I don't. I mean, if it's a sporting event, I have to see live. That's about the only time for me. And I think as you scale younger, it's only worse. So, and cable companies are aware of that. We're aware of it.
My 4-year-old asked me yesterday what a channel was. She had no idea. So I'm like, it's not on the channel, and she's like, what is that? Like,
exactly the point. And I think we don't deal with unscripted as much, Adam's alluding to, but we've been playing with it on the sports side a little bit, and the margins are so razor thin as are offered. I mean, it's almost not worth it unless you want to just bank on this one day becoming a very big success. So we have a sports show, and we've decided we're better off going, I don't want to name it, but we have an offer from a major network. It's known for sports and things. It's not ESPN. And we've looked, we're exploring with the Gatorades and the Anheuser-Busch's and the Red Bulls of the world, and going with a pure sponsorship model and launching it on one of their .coms, actually economically better for us. And I actually wonder, I mean, this is a question for everyone, but at some level, will a lot of this sort of lower margin shows just move to pure sponsorships? Where it's brought to you by, almost like the old days. Then
go back to the beginning, right? Brought to you by Westinghouse. That's how it all started.
Because the commercial values just continue to dip outside of very rare situations.
And basically on the same point as them, and I'm not really sure how that works on like Adam's shows, but we're doing a pretty small show in comparison to everything else we're talking about, like a Saturday morning show for one of the networks. And we kind of had the idea of why not go back, and it's family oriented. And we went back and offered to pay for the whole thing instead of having it be financed. And we completely changed the dynamics of the revenue model. Instead of us getting a small portion internationally and for format rights, we actually turned it exactly upside down, and they get a very small percentage and we get everything. And the great thing, and as we were just hearing, the majority of the finance ended up being paid for by sponsorships. So, but we took the first step and said, we'll take the risk. And so that was a really great coup for us.
Yeah.
So.
I really predict that we have to go back to that space, and that's going to be more, where sponsors or just strategic partnerships are really going to be the things that cut through, because it just makes more economic sense for everyone. The sponsor who knows that they can narrowly work with the partner that can get the audience and bring the audience that they want, and then the filmmaker or the creator or that basically says, look, I'm not gonna just throw my stuff out there and take tiny dollars because you're not really focusing on it, and then ultimately lose and you still own my content. So I think those who have the leverage, and we're talking about leverage, and find the right partners. We've done stuff with Red Bulls and others. I mean, they're out there actively looking to say they want more of a return on their dollars, and you want more of a potential platform for its success. And so I just think it's going to be inevitable that more of these deals will occur, because you have to cut through now an incredible morass of just static in order to cut through. And nobody wants to just spin the way they could spin. When there were 3 broadcast networks, they knew it was a third of a chance you were going to watch their content, right? When there were a few dominant cable channels, they knew there was a real chance you were going to watch. Today, there's just too many channels, and the younger generation's not even watching channels. There are too many ways to get to the consumer, and you've got to have, I think, really concentrated, heavy dollars and smart strategies to get to those consumers. And that, to me, breeds real strategic partnerships to do that. So you're going to see more of it, in my opinion.
Is that what you guys are doing at Fox, Stephen? Or?
No, I was just going to say the biggest problem you have right now is that advertisers are still scared of walking away from mass audiences. It's a huge problem, and every year around this time of year, in May, there'll be this big upfront meeting in New York, and the advertisers come, and there has barely been a blip in the amount of money that advertisers have been spending with the networks. It's frightening because, like you're saying, you would think that advertisers would look at this and go, you're not delivering what I'd rather do a scatter shot and take shows that have a much more defined point of view that matches up with my product. It's definitely happening, but the bulk of money, and I don't think you'll see any kind of massive change until you see some brave advertiser or advertising agency who's going to say, you know what, I'm cutting back. I mean, we're talking about $2-3 billion, per network, some a little even more, that they're making out of this. And generally speaking, because of all of the clutter, it's also true on the cable channels too, but certainly because of all that clutter, they're sitting there looking at lower numbers and happy at numbers that I have to tell you, I worked at the
show canceled, right?
Yeah,
or
canceled. They wouldn't get on.
It'd
Be canceled by one episode. I mean, I worked at NBC for 14 years. These numbers are insane. I mean, you looked at a number and overnight it'd be gone. And now you're happy to get that number. And, so I agree that the next step has to be advertisers getting more involved in smaller, and smaller compared to the networks, the cable networks and traditional. That's going to be a big key. And I really truly believe that watch what the numbers are going to be this year. And they usually, about June, the upfronts or somewhere, they start buying season somewhere around there. And you will see, like I said, unless there's going to be some major person coming out, major company coming out and willing to pull out $500 million. But probably, somewhere significant. And that's what will, open the gates. That's when things will start tumbling down and more money will flow into, the places that they probably, ultimately right now they're saying that's how our bang for the buck goes. And we're going to be careful on how we spend it. But I do think that at some point somebody's going to look at themselves and go, why are we spending all this money? Let's push more of it toward, these kind of things, new areas, new places, and others will follow suit because it's all sheep-like.
I want to clarify something along that. Now, that's real traditional model. To me, I call that, that's the dinosaur model.
That's the network and
doing it, but even within that model, you see a lot of dollars shifting from, kind of television to digital every year. More and more, they're trying to spin in digital. What I'm really pointing out, in addition to the traditional model, that's just new sources of revenue and new dollars that are coming into the game, where you can go direct to a retailer, direct to a major partner, and not going through advertisers, and actually partnering with a retailer or a major company that has a marketing budget and says, I don't know about television and how to get to NBC, ABC, but I know this brand can put, a lot of eyeballs where I need it. And those are the new deals for the new content creators or new companies with brands and leverage it, that basically says, look, I'm not going to even play in that space because they seem to be, have crazy numbers there. They're not getting the returns. I'm going to go direct to a major brand or a major company, and we're going to cut a deal on the side. And to me, that's new money. Those are people who don't want to go and just fall within that crazy system that doesn't make sense to spend $3 billion on ABC, CBS, NBC, and the other networks that don't have the returns. And the Red Bulls, the Googles, the Walmarts, those guys are basically doing real direct deals. And to me, that's the trend that's exciting as a deal maker, because then I'm sitting across the table from a marketing team with a budget of $200 million, and I might get 30 million of it. And that's a real exciting potential that didn't exist many years ago, because they wouldn't even entertain that kind of conversation.
And I'll tell you, I think we are at a tipping point. I read a metric a couple of weeks ago, I think it was an ad week, that this is the first year that advertisers have spent more money on digital than on television. I think it was like 51% to 49%. So you see how close it was. From a sponsorship perspective, kind of on the unscripted side of things, also scripted because we do that, but on the unscripted side of things, typically, again, these networks want to own everything. Absolutely everything. So even if I bring a sponsorship to the table, if I bring a brand to the table, half the time I can't even get 50% of that. Sometimes I do if I have a prior precedent, sometimes I don't. But for the most part, I'm not incentivized to bring a brand in, whether it's digital or whether it's traditional. And that's frustrating because we have the potential to bring in a lot of brands. I will tell you, a lot of the ad sales at the networks are resistant to that, where I won't even bring the potential of a brand being involved in a pitch, because it will actually hurt the deal. Yeah, absolutely. So, but again, the gloves are off on the digital side of things. So the YouTube group that I just did the deal with, there's 6 of them. Last year alone, they had $3 million. These are 26-year-old kids. $3 million in direct branding sponsorships. These are brands, by the way, these kids have no manager. They do it all on their own.
They soon will. Because
that?
I've noticed at the YouTube studios that the big agencies are starting to come in to the weekly happy hours and things of that
No,
nature.
trust me, the agents and managers are all over them. But this group, they made that amount of money, and I just told them, like, look, keep doing it that way. We don't need to give that to the network. The good news is we can go to the network and go, look, network, these guys have already been doing this. You don't deserve to share in that. You want them because of their talent. You want them because of their views, but you're not going to share in that. And we're working on other distribution channels on our back end outside of the show that we're going to have on the network, so that we can monetize that back end on the digital with them, where the brands are coming directly to them, and we'll take it to a digital platform and just have that as a side channel.
At Fox, are you doing anything interesting?
Separate from brand sponsored stuff, we're actually doing a slate of feature films that are cast or made by digital native stars, people coming off of YouTube and Vine, and we're relying on their social reach as the primary promotional vehicle for the film. So if they have 10 million YouTube subscribers or 6 million Vine followers, or they're on Instagram or whatever it is, like, we're building into their contract a minimum amount of promotional support they'll do through those channels. And it's interesting, the issues that it's fun negotiating something for the first time, because you have all these weird things that have never come up before, like
what?
Like burying a tweet in your feed. Like, we ask for, you could tweet something, promote it, but then just like tweet 6 more things and then nobody will ever see it. So you have to kind of build in this, like, we want 6 hours of exclusivity. You send our tweet with our link and you can't post anything else for 6 hours. Because we want their audiences to see the tweet, blah, blah, blah. And so we build in a kind of a contractual minimum obligation, but we also give them a financial incentive, like a real one.
That is different, because a lot of the deals I've seen, they've just been demanding quite a bit on the digital side, and there really is no additional.
Well, it's when you're trying to kind of
for what is
encourage them to be sharing and be tweeting and be promoting the film, because that's translating into real sales. Because the primary platform these will be distributed through are like EST platforms and DHD platforms, like your Xbox and iTunes and Google Play, et cetera, or cable and satellite VOD, and it's no secret that studios tend to have a reputation of having definite back-end definitions that can be kind of aggressive, and some of the other competitors who are in this space, such as some of the NCNs or smaller studios, they can they're not so, they can be a little more flexible in how they define that. But at a big company like Fox, it's a little tougher. So we designed a workaround where it's like a per unit royalty and stuff that we try to incorporate. So.
With the deals changing so wildly all the time, how are you guys staying on top of what's going on?
Talking to your kids, right?
Other than working, I suppose.
Yeah.
Well, our firm represents so many different new companies coming up. And again, since we've been on both sides of these types of deals, you really do get a chance to find out what other people are doing. I was going to say once in a while agents will tell you, but are there any agents in the room? Okay, good. They lie. They have a tendency to sort of stretch the truth. But
He's
I think
telling the
that's
truth.
the way of telling.
You're telling the truth.
Um,
And I would say that if my agent was sitting right next to me.
yeah. So anyway, so I think that's part of how we know. But these things do kind of float to the top. I mean, it's not something that so little of this is now proprietary. It used to be everyone would do no quotes. Well, no quotes mean nothing. They really don't. I mean, it's a small town and people, that's how at least my firm, that's how I find out things.
I think in this space, again, as you said earlier, staying on top of it means what, 5 minutes ago? Now there's a new change. And for me, if I have a client with a tremendous amount of leverage, or those young kids you were saying who don't want to be in the TV game, I'm going to be like the Wild Wild West. I'm going to come up with some ideas, come up very creatively, maybe challenge the networks to do things they've never done before, and you can actually do it. To me, that's the fun part of what we're doing right now. The landscape is so different. Talking about, 6 hours around the tweet. Well, my client tweets all the time. They can't be, doing it that way. I love these lists now that we'll get sometimes with all the areas. You got to do Vine, you got to do Instagram, you got to do Twitter, you got to do Facebook, you got to do all these things. And I laugh when I come back, and some clients don't do one thing, they do none of it, and you have to.
And by the way, Daryl, my theory is the audience can sniff that stuff out too. So the networks can put it in the contracts, but I'm telling you, they know on social media when it feels like a produced
when it's
tweet.
not authenticated.
Absolutely.
But the point is, my point
That's why
is,
they're not watching TV.
Yeah, it's the wild, wild west right now, and a lot of this stuff is really a function of leverage, function of timing, and a function of demand. And so I don't find, how do you stay on top of it? To me, I'll tell you, in the last year, I have done more things for the first time, in the digital space than I have in any other medium.
You mean just enjoying entertainment yourself?
Well, no, just enjoying pushing the deal, enjoying, finding, having a client that actually doesn't have to be on television or doesn't have to be in a big studio or Hollywood system. That's a rarity, for a traditional film and TV lawyer who does what, I got to fight, but I don't want to break the deal. These kids and these people, really don't need it. Now, they'd like to be part of it, but they don't need it. And it's interesting because you're actually creating real partnerships where two parties find something interesting together, and therefore there's a compromise and ultimately a deal. So the point is, I stay on top by, pushing the envelope, talking with your colleagues, looking at what's out there, and then just appreciating the fact that things will continue to evolve based on a function of leverage.
Yeah, I would just add, I agree. I mean, staying connected, having a network, not in like the schmoozy sense, but a sort of tight group that you can share things as needed, because it is changing all the time. But I love it because it allows you to actually apply logic and rationale, which is not traditionally how entertainment deals are done.
Right.
Entertainment deals, for those that don't know, it's generally so much of it is based on precedent. It's like, well, my guy got this before, so he gets it now. I actually don't come from the studio system. I come from tech venture startup, and this never made sense to me. I was like, but this is a totally different show with totally different people and totally different budgets. So let's actually negotiate something that makes sense for me. So I think having this, that we keep saying the Wild West, but having a kind of a blank canvas to just apply what would seem to make sense here. And I will often do like, but this is our policy, and people just buy it because it's all brand new anyway. I think makes our respective jobs a little more interesting.
Yeah. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, in light of that, I forget sometimes that maybe for me it's different, but some people just to kind of keep on top of everything. So you have trigger points, not just to read Hollywood Reporter and Variety, but actively read stuff like TechCrunch and other things that are constantly saying how deals are changing and how one company's getting together with someone else. And And suddenly you might read something and be like, wow, that sounds like a great company to pitch to, or whatever else, or whatever. But in line with everything everyone else is saying, yeah, if you have a lawyer friend, go take them to lunch, chat them up.
Generally speaking, do you think ask and ye shall receive works?
It was a collective no.
No.
That's what we meant.
Or depends on who you ask and
It's
what you
still
want
a
to say.
yeah, it's still a cutthroat
Exactly.
business. No one's giving anyone anything.
Right.
If you could change one thing about the digital deal-making process, what would it be?
I mean, I guess I'll throw out, because it just feeds on what I just said, more open-mindedness, because I still think that we're dealing with new media and the tendencies to try to fit it into past models. So I'd love to see more adjustment and willingness to sort of experiment by the traditional companies out there.
Yeah, I think that's the perfect way to describe it. I mean, what you're butting up against, coming up against sometimes is the people who don't want to switch away from the traditional model, using your description of it, or they're going along just because their client has told them. You can just see there's no real conviction. It's just a lot easier using the this is the precedent.
Right.
It's just a very easy way to deal with it until you go, wait, this has nothing to do with what you did before. You can't just use that number and reduce it down by 20% or however these things go. And I think that's part of it too. You're going to have a buy-in. And it starts, not that I want to go through the trend of agencies, but it does start there to a large degree. Because lawyers, I think, certainly in the entertainment world, are getting it, because they're getting, assuming you have clients who are in that space, you're getting the fact that, you have to be creative, you have to do these different things. And when you come up against someone who goes, nope, that's what they got last time, they're not going to get any less. That's a hard thing to, I think that's where this becomes a really difficult process. And so there's such a reaction, I know what you want, but there's such a knee-jerk reaction, and I forget who I was talking Daryl, I think earlier, is, especially at, again, the more traditional where you're trying to move them to, is there's this knee-jerk reaction of no. Because that's the easiest answer you can give. No. Nobody's going to second guess you until the show becomes a big hit. And you look like a complete idiot, which there's a line that forms to the left. But I think that's probably the biggest thing, and he's right, it is open-mindedness and understanding the new dynamics.
And I'd flip it around too, because not just to bag on Hollywood. I mean, Hollywood, once broken through, I mean, as content creators, talent, it really respects talent. I mean, and whether that's just the agencies, the management, whatever, doing this, really respects talent. And I'm not sure for the most part, digital companies or tech companies necessarily have that yet. So they're also applying what they see as sort of the formula. And so it's really just kind of finding a meeting of the minds, I would say. So it's open-mindedness from both sides.
Well, let's open it up to questions. All right.
I have a question for Mr. Reed. I read your article in Forbes from last month, and you talk a lot about Middle America and how you kind of try to see what trends are coming out. Can you kind of describe your process on how you stay on those trends and what's coming out?
Sure. Yeah. It's interesting. I said in that article that I try to divorce myself from my own interest when my development team is coming to me and bringing me ideas, because I think inevitably those of us that live on the coast, New York and California, are a bit warped and think a little bit differently than middle America. I'm making a broad generalization, but from a development perspective, it's like, I want this intelligent stuff, and that's going to translate, and you have to boil it down to its very, very base elements. And I pointed out in that article, I mean, I have a great development team, but I don't just take ideas and pitches from my development team. Outside people come and pitch me, relationships. I meet people, they bring ideas in. So to me, the answer is I don't have a defined process in the sense that, it's only going to come in from here. I'll give you a quick example. I I had a show called Preacher's Daughters, which was on, it's been on Lifetime for 3 seasons, a big franchise. And that idea was not my idea. It was not my development team's idea. As a matter of fact, I had a kid that I went to high school with who stalked me on Twitter for about a year. Not while we were in high school, but now. I actually didn't really know him in high school. So he was following me on Twitter and direct messaging me and this, that, and the other. And I was like, after about a year, I said, you know what? I've got to respond to this guy. So I responded because I didn't know he was going to show up on my doorstep or what. But I responded to him, and he's the one that had the idea for Preacher's Daughters. He had a reel. He found people online, and it made me realize, like, I've got to stop being above it all. Oh, so I know where the idea is going to come from. I know a good idea. I challenge my development team all the time to tell me I'm wrong, because if you're right, it is easy to say no, whether it's legal or creative. So it's easy for me to say, no, that's not going to work. And oftentimes I'll say if the majority of the room says I'm wrong, then I'm wrong, and then we go. So I think ideas can come from anywhere, and you have to stay open-minded about it, especially in the digital space. We're starting an entire digital arm at Think Factory now. I was just over the YouTube space on Friday and saw some really incredible things that space is doing. So for us, we really, really are trying non-traditional methods, because here's the sad fact of the matter, as these guys mentioned, the traditional TV model is dying. It is, in my opinion, a river of nickels. The only way you can afford, the only way a company like mine stays in business is volume. But in order to have volume, you also have to deliver quality. So you have to balance volume with quality, or these networks that you're in business with aren't going to keep coming back. So for me, I want to get in the digital space because I see everything imploding on the traditional model. And to me, that's where I'm excited to go with the company.
Right. Yes.
Yes, this is to the entire panel. First of all, thank you for coming. I would like to know how do a network like Netflix makes money off of House of Cards, for example.
Subscriptions. They have an algorithm which I'll never share, but
Why would they make it? Why spend money on something that you don't need to make?
it's brought an unbelievable amount of subscriptions.
Yeah, and remember,
Their
Netflix,
stock price just shot up because of it. They have 2 weeks ago.
Netflix started primarily just showing other people's content, right?
Right.
And if other people don't give them the content, they can't show new content and get new subscriptions. So as they become more of a competitor, others are going to either get higher prices or start squeezing their model for giving them that content. I think it became internally, again, with this whole idea, if we got a big audience and we can create our own content and serve that audience, we have a more direct engagement with that audience. We don't have to use Universal's, Warner Brothers content in order to get that audience. We're going to have a much better self-sustaining business model. So I think it's about self-preservation and self-sustainability.
And differentiate
their
them.
ability. Yeah.
And just differentiating themselves. I mean,
Or
there's
not
a lot of
not getting
competitors.
cancellations, right?
What's
I
that?
mean, not getting cancellations. Like I won't cancel Netflix.
Yeah. Yeah, but it's it's an incredible. We talk about branded entertainment. That was an incredible branding exercise for them, because it made all of a sudden you rethought of Netflix as like, oh, my old movies. Now you're like, oh my God, they're premium content.
Yeah.
They're ultra content because they have the best show out probably last year.
So at the end of the day, it's $10 at a time. One subscription.
Right, or $1 from a billion people. That's
Millions and millions and millions.
pretty good business, right?
I guess keep talking about content and ideas, and I'm a writer. I'd like to consider myself a director, but I have a production company, and we have great ideas and a lot of content. And without stalking somebody on Twitter, how do I get that and have someone take a chance on my ideas? I haven't produced anything spectacular and don't have this big name and all these connections. How do we get it to people like you, Mr. Miller, and Cisco and Reed, that are going to take chances on us and our content and materials?
You have to keep knocking on doors.
Yeah, they can.
Don't let anybody tell you no. I don't know any other way to say it. Don't let anybody tell you no.
Someone finds you on Twitter.
Find me on Twitter.
But the content itself is going
The
to
other thing, I want to add something too. Often say, are you actually creating your content right now? Are you waiting? Okay. Yeah, I mean, look, the one thing I do love, again, about the space as a lawyer, there's so many content creators who don't have access, who are creating stuff and making the town come to you, right? It used to be you had to knock all day and get someone to see your content, but I know a number of executives and senior people who will watch content and find and go after the individual. So, make sure you're creating your content, getting it out there on the right platforms, and then building your own audience. My most successful unknown clients have mega audience. One kid walked in with 7 million followers. Never heard of them, whatever. I was able to walk to a big universal system and get a wonderful deal. But at the end of the day, there are a lot of people who are just great at what they do, in addition to creating content, aggregating their own audiences. So don't underestimate that power. And that's the beauty of the digital space. You're not limited to coming to Hollywood to access to people. It's really about, you having direct access and people liking your content enough to aggregate around your content. So build an audience. Hollywood will come.
Right. There's a question way back in the very back.
Thank you. I understand why most of what you've addressed is changes with the contracts mostly around content. How does this digital format affect the contracts for the crew members? These kids are coming in and they're like, I got all that, but when they get offered a piece to finally move on to a feature, well, they're gonna have to go through SAG. And I understand also that after IOC, a lot of them are now coming in and having these formats, these contracts for these digital formats. But what are you guys seeing, how it affects, I understand why the content's so important, unless you have a person who makes it, and how these Wild West ideas are translated to people understanding how things get done safely and delivered. That makes sense.
We shoot under union contracts. It's not, and a lot of them look very much like traditional media contracts in terms of the protections and the rates and everything. So it's when it comes to labor, at a certain budget threshold, it looks very much like traditional media.
That's the same for us too. Everything we've done on the digital side has been full unions, full rates for the most part. I imagine you probably have a different answer.
Look, the scripted stuff we do is union. The unscripted stuff where we can afford to do it, we do it as union. But again, it's shrinking budgets. You're lucky if you get $150,000 to $200,000 a half hour now, for an unscripted series. So, as much as I would like to be able to abide by the unions and have every one of my productions fall under that, the networks say, do it for this price or don't do it. So at a certain point as a producer, I got to decide, do I want to keep the doors open and keep producing and hopefully the volume pays off, or, tell the networks no.
All right. There's a question there that I was going to take that one, then I'll get yours.
For those of you who were involved in deals on feature film and digital platforms, can you share some of your experiences?
It was wonderful. She was asking about when doing contracts with digital and how it relates to feature films, kind of what that experience is like. And it's like it's very a number of issues are very similar, rate and back end and definitions and emotional commitments and whatnot, but there's a couple of bits and pieces that are unique, such as are you relying on them to kind of through their social reach to do anything for the film, and but for the most part, it's the contracts are very similar, I think, at least in my experience.
But I'll tell you what's exciting, I think, for independent filmmakers is, used to be a lot of outlets in the traditional mediums to release your films. And I think many of those independent film distributors have kind of dried up. There are a lot, I think, in the digital space, a lot of different places you can go and a lot of different platforms you can put your content on, and there are brokers and agents and others who will help you do that. So there's to me, that's exciting. There's a lot of places to sell your content in the digital world, which is way more than there were before.
And I think that the big trick in the last 20 years, I'll say, is with a lot of the independent distributors, they would, they're making some sort of commitment, either financially or promotionally, and so that there's something in it for you. I think the thing you got to look out for when you're making a piece of premium content that you've invested a lot of resources in, is just going to a content aggregator that's not giving you anything in return. I think that's just be wary of that. If you're, ideally you can get some sort of advance, but in case that's not possible and on the table, at least you want some sort of promotional commitment. I think would be critical.
There's a question in the middle.
So I just collectively heard from everybody, if you are an unknown actor and you have a lot of followers and subscribers, there are people that watch you, you could kind of walk in with your own deal or send it to somebody and they see how many you have and give you a plug to come in and pitch them about their show or whatever they have.
Yeah, I mean, to Daryl's point earlier, and it's a very good point, create great content, put it online, someone will find it. I guarantee you, one of my development executives is gonna find you.
Right.
You know?
How did you get my number? I get that all the time.
Yeah, exactly. So we trust me, we find you, and we find them when you create great content. So that's really what it comes down to. And to a point that somebody made earlier on the panel, the gloves are off. You have the traditional studio system and movie and TV and networks, the gloves are off. You're straight to consumer now. You're straight to the producers now. You're straight to the networks now sometimes. So make it and we'll find you.
Yeah, I would just add to that. I mean, and to your point before, I mean, if you're not naturally connected, you don't have a big name agent, manager, lawyer, et cetera, then at least it helps sort of the filtering process is that helps you stand out. For us, I mean, the built-in audience would be a nice feather in the cap, but your concept at the end of the day is what's going to bring you in.
What if you need help creating that content? So,
It's concept or content?
Content.
concept. What if you need help? I have plenty of concepts, but what if you need help creating the content as well?
Go to YouTube Studio. No, I don't know.
There's a question out there.
Hi, my name's Erin. I'm a content creator. Thank you so much for being here. I have a question that's come from some of your answers, mainly for Steven. You say you have many movies in development with some of this talent from Vine and small YouTube videos. And I'm wondering how talent to create a 6-second video translates to talent to serve a 100-minute narrative script.
I mean, it's not going to be everyone. It's just like every wrestler coming out of WWE doesn't become The Rock. It's careful curation and evaluation, and every boy band isn't full of Justin Timberlakes. There's a very small set of them that I think have a reputation for being performers and being writers and directors, and it's about identifying them, and and it's competitive for those people. It's not, you're not going to be paying them scale. There's a lot of people who are trying to be in this space. So
Also, whether it's 6 seconds or 60 minutes, you can tell often a breakthrough concept, right? Or a breakthrough idea. And I often see, that's what kind of that lightning strikes when you see something that really is unique, fresh, you see the traffic behind it, you see the engagement, and that's where you start to see people kind of swarming on. So, short form content can play just as well as long form content from independent creators, because it's really, I find, about the concept and what works and what catches their eye.
All right. Did you?
Sandra Marshall, hi everyone. Thanks for coming. I was going to ask you, first of all, I think webisodes are great to do, but I personally do things I get paid for. But what about, I'm a tremendous actor, but I'm not doing stand-up, because I figured that a lot of people come to see stand-up and will write me a TV show because I'm very unusual. It's called charisma. So what do you recommend about doing stand-up, and do you put it on YouTube? And do you go to stand-up, because I have flyers for everyone here.
I mean, I think stand-up comedy clubs are it's just like, I think it's very similar to YouTube in some respects. It's a discovery platform. Just like there are A&R executives and comedy executives and development executives cruising around YouTube. I think all YouTube is going to provide for you is another discovery platform. So if you can find a way to kind of get your videos shot well and produced well, and I don't think it hurts to put them on YouTube, because who knows who's going to discover it and watch it, and that isn't able to make it out on Saturday night.
Thank you.
Well, it's also just picture a development meeting and someone says, I saw Sandra last night. She was great, blah, 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 blah. Okay, I'm not convinced to I can actually watch her act right now as we're talking about it, because it's up on YouTube. That's very helpful for the meeting.
I have a great website.
Well, thank you for coming, everyone.
I'm sure.